This podcast is for you if you want to learn about the wonderful and wacky world of the English language and the people who speak it. If you want to learn English, speak English, and understand different speakers of English, then you're in the right place and you're going to love our podcast episode today. Welcome to English World with Kris and Amerikos. We are a team of language lovers, expert teachers, and native speakers who are on a mission to help people around the world speak English and show the world their true value. We correct mistakes, practice pronunciation, and explore grammar rules while drinking coffee and having fun. So get comfortable, relax, grab a pen and paper, and welcome to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by English Every Day, an unlimited speaking practice program where you can join live speaking practice lessons with professional native teachers 5 times every day. There are a lot of courses on the internet and a lot of useful videos too, but the one thing that is missing for most English learners is practice. And if you need speaking practice, then English Every Day is for you. So click the link in the description or go to krisamerikos.com to learn more today. Well, today we're here with Colin Munro. And Colin, tell us a little bit about how you got started in English teaching and YouTube and all of that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. Well, on how I got started on YouTube is actually happened a lot earlier than how I got started on with teaching. Yeah, my background was filmmaking. That's what I studied at university and what I did for the first few years of my career. So I graduated university in 2002 with a film and video production degree. And I went to work for a company that did visual effects. So I worked on a couple of the Harry Potter films. Then I left there and I started my own sort of video production company with a couple of friends from university. So this is all before YouTube was around. This was 2004, but it was about when YouTube launched. So when YouTube launched, I remember I first heard about it from this 15-year-old kid that was in a band that we were doing a music video for. And he was like, "Oh, it's on YouTube." I was like, "What? What's YouTube?" And this is 2006, remember? So, you can forgive me for not knowing. If you didn't know what YouTube was now, it'll be very different. But I did that, but I started to get a little bit tired of kind of making videos for other people, and it wasn't making great money either. So I decided to sort of travel for a bit. And my dad is from Paraguay in South America, so I decided to visit Paraguay for a few months, and during those few months, I decided I wanted to go for longer. So I actually came back to the UK, did a CELTA course for teaching English, because that was what I was planning to do when I went to Paraguay. So I went back, sort of put filmmaking behind me temporarily, started teaching English, and then after a little while, the two things inevitably came together. And
that sounds so similar to my story. I didn't have heritage from Russia, but I became interested in Russia and Russian people. And so I went over there for a few months and I liked it and I needed to find a way to get back. But the only job I could find, because I didn't speak Russian, was teaching English. So I did a CELTA and then had the job there. And it's so cool that it worked like that for you too. And tell us a little bit more about what it was like to work on the Harry Potter films. So I know you were behind the scenes there and working on effects and stuff, right? Is that right?
The one I worked on the most was the third one, The Prisoner of Azkaban. And the company that I worked for, we did the Hippogriff, if you're familiar with it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There was a lot of other visual effects, but we just did the Hippogriff. Now, when I say I worked on, I was one of the runners. So my job was basically to go around and collect the dirty teacups from the people who were actually doing the work.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even make the tea. I just collected the dirty teacups.
But you were in.
So I was very
learning from what.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was great. And there's some interesting things I can tell you, actually. If you've read the books, and if you're a big fan, then you've read the books and seen the movies, then you'll know that there was a big fight between one of the hippogriffs in the book and a werewolf character. Because in the book there was 3 hippogriffs. In the movie they cut it down to 1 because 1 was enough work. There was a big fight, but in the movie they just sort of growl at each other. That's because the company that did the werewolf was a completely separate company. So they couldn't really appear. Well, for them to appear in the same frame was a lot more difficult than you would think. So I think there's only like 1 shot where they're actually in the same frame. So it's funny how sort of business affects the creativity of things.
Absolutely.
Like that. Yeah. I also, at the same time, we were doing Troy.
Oh, okay.
With Brad Pitt. We did all the boats on Troy. And there was a Thunderbirds movie around about the same time. We did all the spaceships on that, and that was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who was he used to be one of the actors in Star Trek. So got to hang out with him a few times, which was great because I used to be a huge Star Trek fan.
That's so cool. And so you were telling us that you went to Paraguay, you kind of fell in love with teaching English, or at least living in Paraguay and using English as a job. And then that transitioned into YouTube too. And so yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah. So to be honest, it wasn't really a plan. I wasn't planning I'm going to start a YouTube channel and start making regular videos and things, because it wasn't really, even then, that was 2000. It was probably around 2010, 11 when I started the channel. But I remember there was one thing that really kicked it off, and you'll know how in every sort of language institute that you have the sort of phonetic chart poster on the wall of every classroom.
Yeah.
And in South America, people don't really use that. I think that's more useful in countries where maybe if they have a more phonetic alphabet, so it's maybe their alphabet is a different alphabet, so they're not so familiar with it, and they are more familiar with things being more phonetic. But yeah, so I thought I wanted to kind of understand this, and at the same time, YouTube launched a feature called the annotations, which they've now got rid of. And I saw, and that annotations allowed you to select a certain part of the screen and make that clickable. And that could happen any time in the video. Now we've got the end screens, which sort of replaced annotations. I decided to make a video of the chart where you could click on part of the part of the screen, and it would take you to the part of the video where it makes that sound.
Yeah.
And that did really, really well, because the video itself was about 5 minutes, but people would click on the buttons which would jump them back and forth, and they would spend more than 5 minutes watching the video, which, if you know, I'm sure you know about the YouTube algorithm and things like that. And so that sort of hacked the retention, the watch time. If people were watching more than 100%, watch time. So that video started to just do really, really well. And it was just an experiment, really, to try and to do something a bit different with that feature that YouTube had.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started building an audience of people who were interested in phonetics. So I then went ahead and made a video on all the different sounds, and another video explaining the chart and how it works and the logic behind it, and sort of went from there. And to this day, sort of my channel, most people watching my channel are interested in phonetics, but that's really, down to just me experimenting with that. It's not really what my expertise is. So yeah. Although I've become kind of an expert, I suppose. But really, everything that's in my video, I learned everything to make the videos. It wasn't that I was making videos about what I already knew.
Uh-huh. I got it. Well, I think a lot of people would see your channel with 200,000 subscribers and would say, wow, that's a really successful channel. There's a lot of creators who are struggling to get the first couple thousand. And so what do you think your secret sauce is? Or like what was it that catapulted you to 200,000?
Well, that's a good. Well, it's partly what I said, how that video hacked the algorithm in a way.
Mhm.
Even though YouTube's got rid of that feature, that video still gets views, even though it doesn't really work anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's you just got to keep at it, I suppose. I mean, time is, you got to be patient. We're talking more than 10 years ago when I started the channel,
Yeah.
and and I've had kind of distinct chapters of where I've been working on it intently, and then I stop, and then I come back to it and try something a little bit different. So yeah, I would say you got to think about it in the long term. You're not. It's a long-term project, and don't be afraid to kind of put it on the back burner for a while and come back to it but always try and learn from what you're doing, and think of ways that you can improve what you're doing. And if you keep doing that, then you should start to eventually get some traction, because
Yeah.
when you first put out a video, especially nowadays, no one's going to watch it, or it's very difficult to get an audience. It's very difficult to get things started. Watching an interview of Mr. Beast where he says, if you start a channel, commit yourself to making 100 videos and don't expect anyone to watch them. But with every video, try and learn something, and do something better every time. So I've met a lot of people who they want to start a channel, but then they learn all these things that you can do, and there's so much information out there now that you get sort of analysis paralysis, and you think, oh, I can't start now because I don't have the right lights, or I can't start now, I don't have the right camera, or
Yeah.
I don't know how to do good thumbnails or whatever. So there's just so many things that people think they need all of them to start.
Yeah.
But you mustn't think like that. Just start and gather those things as you go. That would be my advice.
Oh, for me, absolutely. It's just time. Our channel is kind of different in the way that it grew mostly because of ads, because we had a good product to sell, and by running ads on the channel, we gain a lot of subscribers that way. So probably more than half of the subscribers on our channel came from that. And a lot of times I'll meet people who say, oh, I'm not subscribed to your channel, but I saw all of your ads. And so it's like, the channel hasn't been the main focus so much, but it's a good platform to communicate with people who are interested in what you want. So it's a good business platform.
Yeah. And that's good. I'm thinking of starting another channel soon, on a slightly different topic. So I know I'm thinking of doing some pay-per-click just to promote it and get the ball rolling a bit faster. But if you're if somebody wants to start the first channel, I would say I would probably not recommend doing that, because there's a lot to learn first, and the best way to learn is to start putting stuff out.
You have to make the organic content first, and make sure you get some traction,
and then understand sort of the analytics on the back end. That so once you've got your click-through rates, because if your click-through rates are low and you put money into that, then you're just throwing the money away.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, click-through rates and retention are the two sort of numbers on the analytics side that you need to get to a good point before it's even worth putting money into.
Yeah. And yeah, if anyone is watching or listening thinking growing your channel with ads, I'm I just want to be clear about that. Like, I'm not talking about paying money to grow the channel. I'm talking about paying money to sell a product on my website.
Right.
And those ads have to run from an account. And so the ads run from our channel's account. And because it runs from the channel's account, some of the people who see the ads click over and check out the channel and subscribe. And so it's just a byproduct of selling a product. And if you're not selling the product profitably, then it doesn't make any sense to run those ads. So basically our channel grew because the ads paid for themselves with the first purchase of the product. And so it was basically free to collect that audience. And so that's like, if you can get that, if you have the products that can sell on the front end, then you can dump a ton of money into it. And as a byproduct, you become
when you can set a budget for it. And it's, you've covered those costs.
But learning more about, your channel and how it connects to your business, we're really touching on personal development now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, because I've been thinking about this. Everyone learning English as a foreign language is doing so for a deeper reason. You know, I mean, people they do. It's good just to know another language, but if people are actually investing in it, it's normally for their career or for immigration purposes, or for to study abroad or something like that.
Something life-changing.
Yeah. So it ties in with personal development as well. So I think it's good to know what those reasons are. When you're working with a student, because that's the broader motivation for it. And sometimes I've worked with students one-on-one who, in their first email, they'll say one thing, but then once I have a few classes with them and get to know them a bit better, the real reason's a bit different.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, and a lot of students just don't even know that they've never really thought about that, about what the deeper reason is, right? You get a lot of people with the surface level reasons saying, I just want to be fluent, or I just want to talk with people, or right. And sure, that's like how the problem presents itself, but there's something deeper there for each person. And I think it's important to get at that. So how do you uncover that?
I don't know, really. It's something that it uncovers itself, I think. If you're working one-on-one, in a class, it's a bit more difficult. But if you're working one-on-one with someone, and it's something that you're thinking about, it sort of uncovers it itself. So I had one student recently, and he said he wanted to improve his pronunciation. But after a few classes and talking with him, and he was like, yeah, because it's for work. And it's like, okay, so what sort of thing at work? I sometimes have to do presentations. And his English and his pronunciation was actually quite good. But what we've ended up studying a lot more is actually presentation skills. That's what it's evolved to. Yeah.
So it turned into more like specific skills that he needs for his job.
Yeah. And that's not something, if someone wanted to, work on presentation skills, they wouldn't necessarily come to me. It's not something I've ever advertised. But it is something I've studied a bit as well because of the videos and things. So I have been able to work with him on that as well. So that's been quite fun.
Cool. So coming back to YouTube, do you think it's more of an education platform or an entertainment platform or a business platform? Because I see people using it, I mean, I guess ideally for all three purposes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all those things and more. It just depends on what you want at any time, So, I mean, YouTube, I think, is like the second most popular search engine after Google. It may have even overtaken Google itself as just as a search engine itself, because sometimes people, whatever they're looking for, they'd like it to be presented to them in a video.
I recently saw an article with the data that showed that people are searching now more on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. So they're searching within social media platforms more than on search engines. And this is mostly about like Generation Z, millennials, that they've made this shift. And so for businesses, it's like SEO on those platforms is just as important as for your website now.
Yeah. And SEO is also obviously very important on YouTube. It's one of the things.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that people get bogged down by, and then it's a reason that they don't start, because there's so many different strategies and different ideas, and people feel like if they don't understand it all, then they can't really get started. But yeah, I mean, I suppose if you were, I guess it's important to understand, to know if you're making a video for education purposes or if you're making it for entertainment purposes, because obviously it'll be very different. But also from a search engine optimization point of view, for an education video, you're probably going to want to target specific keywords, relating to your topic. Whereas entertainment, then you just want to grab people's attention, to entertain them. The specific keywords not so important. But then again, I think all of those things sort of, there's no fine line between education and entertainment on YouTube. Because if you make an education video and it's not also entertaining, and no one's going to watch it, they'll find another video. There's so many YouTubers now teaching English that it's not like it's almost impossible to find a topic that no one's done before.
Yeah.
Back when I started, I was pretty much the first person to make videos about phonetics, and so that's partly that's partly why I became successful. But yeah, nowadays it's so much harder to find something new. So you've got to do something better. So you have to be as entertaining as possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get lost in this void between education and business, because even the viewers, even the students, they go there and they want this educational value when they're learning English. And yeah, they'd love for it to be entertaining. So sometimes we see that a more entertaining person will be bigger and more successful on the platform than someone who is maybe a better educator or teacher. But then the business element, it's kind of this thing where people expect the educators not to do business, or a lot of the educators themselves kind of view business as like a dirty word. And so there's this difficult area to navigate between education and business sometimes.
But what do you mean by business on YouTube? You mean people,
like, for example, we take a giant channel, like 5 million subscribers, and they have their courses, their products, and the things that they're selling, in addition to putting out educational videos, right? So someone might go there as a subscriber just to get the educational content, but then they see these offers, and then do the offers actually help the student? Do the offers actually get them the result that they wanted? Or, these kinds of questions. So maybe they followed that person because they wanted to be educated, but now here they are buying products, and it's like another element of the same creator, same business, but that line, sometimes people don't like it. Like, how many times have you seen somebody goes through, there's something offered for free, they go through it, and at the end there's an offer, and then they're like, you said it was free, right? This feeling.
Yeah, well, it's the typical sales funnel type thing. You have your free stuff that you put out and you should get seen by a wide audience, and then you have them click through to a free presentation, and then some of those will buy the products at the end, at the end of it. But people have to have to make a living. But then again, there are a lot of teachers just making videos on YouTube and on social media on the side, and they're not really. Maybe they make a little bit, but not necessarily. They're not necessarily living off it. I mean, so I'm not living off of it 100%. I'm hoping to. I'm having another sort of push now, and I talked earlier about how I've had different chapters where I've had tried out different strategies, and so I'm sort of entering one of those now, where actually. Yeah, so I mentioned that I started this video production company with two of my friends years ago, 2006. That was. I'm actually gone back to them now as a client, and instead of doing all the video production myself, I'm going to hire them to do the post production and editing and designing everything that's going on in the background in my videos.
Amazing.
Yeah, because it was getting to the point where, by the time I'd sort of written the video and done the filming and everything, by the time it got to editing, I just wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
And whereas that's a point where, because I can now hand over to them at that point, they're able to then start, with a whole sort of fresh eyes and new enthusiasm, and inject another level of creativity.
Exactly.
Into it. So I'm hoping that's going to make a really big difference. I think by the time this podcast goes out, the first few of those will be live. So
awesome. Then we'll have to include a link to it under this episode. Definitely.
Great. Yeah. The first one of that new chapter is a video I'm doing on state verbs.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll see the difference between the videos before the state verbs video and after the state verbs video.
This brings up another, interesting question. A lot of people who are teachers kind of think, I'll just record myself teaching something, throw it on YouTube because I'm such a great teacher. It's going to be gold. It's going to go viral. What are some of the other skills that people have to learn to be effective teachers or educators through YouTube or just just online in general?
Yeah, I mean, if you just filmed yourself teaching a class, I don't think that's not going to work, because I mean, where's your focus? So you'd be focusing on students that are in the room, which could work, but I would think you'd need to sort of have multiple cameras and someone editing between you and the students, and they'd have to sign release forms. So that would kind of to make that work would be kind of a big production. But yeah, and so in terms of how different or what the skills are, I guess talking to a camera is, in some ways, it's a lot simpler than talking to a classroom full of students.
Yeah.
But I guess in other ways, it's quite intimidating, and it's quite difficult because you get no
feedback.
No feedback, nothing to. At least when you're in a classroom, you can look at your students and see if they're engaged.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's happened to you. I don't know if it's happened to you, but it's happened to me and other creators I've talked to. But when you first make that first video or whatever, you hear your voice, you see your face, and you're like, oh, that's terrible. It sounds terrible. I have to redo everything.
Yeah.
Happened like that with you?
Yeah, a bit, but it's been such a long time that now I'm very used to it. And even before, so this isn't my first YouTube channel. So when I had the video production company, we sort of had our own channel as well on the side, which is called Giving It a Go. Uh-huh. We used to keep chickens in our garden, and we used to make videos all about that. So I was quite used to being on camera. But having said that, there is still sort of a barrier to, a psychological thing. Like, to once I get started in a filming session, because I normally try to film 2 or 3 at a time, then it's great. But there's always something that holds me back. It's not, I wouldn't call it nerves, but it's a sort of I don't know. but you know what I mean? Like something psychological that just makes it hard to get started. But once I do, then it just flows. Even now, after hundreds of videos on this channel, more on other channels as well. It's not that I'm nervous of being on camera. It's just it's partly that there's a lot of things you got to get organized, and it's not just pressing record. I feel like I have to really be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
To present in a sort of entertaining way.
So how would you describe the English teaching as a foreign language kind of community on YouTube? Because you've put out videos, you've got some feedback from the platform, and you've seen what other people are doing. Do you think this is a positive thing that's going on, or what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. But it is quite difficult because there's lots of people from all over the world, and they all speak different languages and things. My experience has been mostly positive. I know that other people have had some issues, but I think that's definitely part of being on social media. One of the ugly side of social media is that there is a lot of abuse and people online. It does bring out the worst in people in a way when they can hide behind their keyboard. However, I personally, especially on YouTube, it's been mostly positive. On Instagram, I mean, I don't really do Instagram very much, but when I did, I got a lot more negative stuff there than I do on YouTube.
They didn't like the Indian crumpets, or what did you post there?
No, I was just doing similar thing. I was just doing sort of shorter versions of videos on the phonetic sounds, but I guess generally the tone of the comments is a bit is very different. I think on YouTube maybe people are looking to be educated. I mean, maybe back then it was more so that YouTube was more of an it was not an education platform, but but people were using it more for education, whereas Instagram was far more to be entertained. But no, on the whole, I think it's very positive. Yeah. It's difficult to sort of build a community though, because like I said, everyone is spread all over the world. But I think I can definitely do a lot better at that. I do have a Discord as well, and I have a few people in there, but I've not been very good myself. So that's something else I need to improve at, and staying in touch with those people.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it's healthy to have competition in this space, teaching English on YouTube?
Yes, definitely. I mean, and I feel like with most people, it's we're all trying to help each other. It doesn't feel like competition. And it's not like if somebody watches my video, they can't watch your video as well. Right. All our videos are out there for free, so people can watch both. People can subscribe to both our channels, and they should.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. I having this conversation with pronunciation with Emma. Do you know her channel? Yeah. Well, she's saying that she's had some people who do hold back. She's met some teachers that do sort of hold back, and they don't like to collaborate and things.
Oh yeah, I've met a lot of those too.
Mm-hmm. Oh really? Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that has surprised me more recently is channels going after other channels. So publishing like mistakes that other people are making and making a name for yourself that way. Like, how would you feel if someone dedicated their channel to pointing out your mistakes in your YouTube videos?
I've made mistakes, and people love to point them out in the comments and everything. And I think it's kind of hilarious that people do that, especially when this is a video that's like 10 years old and 100 people have pointed out the same mistake before you. Like, what's the point? And it's not like I can go back and change it.
But people will demand remove it. There's a mistake, so you have to remove it. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that as long as generally the video is mostly helpful, more than unhelpful, I'm just gonna leave it. You know, and when I say maybe so, there's minor things, you know, typos, stuff like that. But if somebody created a whole channel dedicated to, I mean, unless suddenly I realized that I was doing something completely wrong all the way along, I think, you know, I'm confident enough that I'm, you know, 95% or more right about most things, that if somebody did that I don't know, I think it would be I hope I would take it as a form of flattery.
Okay.
But I don't know. Has someone done that to you?
No. This is actively happening to someone else, and it's a big discussion
Right.
Among different creators on YouTube. This space.
But creating a whole channel about it. I mean, I can imagine, and I've thought about doing reaction videos to not so much other teachers to point out their mistakes, but people who don't have English as a first language to kind of, you know, not correct their mistakes, but in a constructive way, you know. And I definitely, I mean, if they didn't like it, I'd take it down, and I'd probably reach out to them first and say, "Hey, is it okay if I do this?"
Yeah. You're a gentleman. You would do it that way.
Yeah. So I suppose, yeah, there is a sort of nastier side, I suppose, but I've been lucky that I haven't had any, well, not any major negative experiences of that yet.
That's good. Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive, and sometimes the negative gets too much focus. But yeah, I've had a great experience on YouTube also.
I think if creators are having that, experiencing that, I mean, you should try as much as you can to just ignore it, because you know, if you're probably having a much more positive impact on other people that you don't hear about, but then people do, you know, you hear about the negative side of it, and you get a very imbalanced view of what's going on. Or even if I'm sure that even if you had 10 positive comments and then one negative one, people are going to remember the negative one. It stings more, you know. So yeah, try to have a balanced view, and to let the positive comments affect you as well as the negative ones, and but try not to, you know, let the things get to you, and just focus on what you're doing. That's what I would say to
So not to harp on the negative, but another hypothetical situation. Okay. So imagine that someone made videos or claimed that you're not actually from the UK. Like, it's clear. They listen to your voice and they tell people it's so clear. Just his accent, he's not from there. There's no way that how would you react to that? Like, sure, it's funny.
I don't think I would. Why would I react to that? It's so dumb.
Right.
Yeah, like, and in fact, I may well have had comments like that saying that. You know, and I look through my comments, and you know, I reply to the ones that are worth replying to, especially if it's something that's going to add value to other people who might read it. But if somebody said something like that, I don't know. I mean, what's the point of replying? It's not constructive. It's not going to help anyone else. It's probably not going to help them. It's not going to help me. I'd probably just ignore it. I might even delete it.
Yeah.
You know.
So I guess these questions come back to these two concepts that a lot of English teachers are discussing, which is native speakerism, you know, focusing on native speakers over non-native speakers, and all of the prejudices that come along with that, whether whether it's true that it's better with them or not. Like people discuss this a lot, right? And then the other one
Yeah.
is, prescriptive grammar, telling people that these are the rules and you have to follow, right? So a lot of students are out there looking for error correction and want people to correct their mistakes, but they're attracted to these videos that say, hey, don't do this, or that person is wrong. And it's like a form of error correction, but this assumes that we're forcing some kind of rules, that there's this idea of correct and incorrect, and trying to apply that to every situation, right? So on the native speakerism side, how do you feel about that? Like, I'm sure people have come to you and said, well, it's better for me to study with a native speaker.
Yeah, I definitely had that. I mean, I guess it depends. If that's what people want, then that's fine. But I think especially at lower levels, it might even be better to have a teacher who has the same first language as you. But then again, people learn in different ways, you know. So I've known people who, like when I lived in South America, I'd meet people that would, you know, come as to do a bit of teaching, but also because they wanted to learn Spanish. And some of them could just sort of immerse themselves with lots of Spanish speakers and just kind of absorb, you know, through osmosis. And but I'm not like that. I just don't understand anything, and it's, you know, I need to sort of study and understand the grammar and things like that. So I think different people are wired in different ways. But I do think that the whole native speakerism idea you talk about, people do overestimate it being much better to learn from a native speaker. But perhaps at higher levels, when you've already, you know, if you're just focusing on pronunciation and things, then maybe. But I think there are some really great teachers on YouTube, who, and some great YouTubers who make videos in English when English is not their first language. There's one girl I've been watching a lot of her videos recently. I think she's called Yuri Hanna or something. But she's sort of half Japanese, half something else. But she makes really good videos, and she doesn't really try and teach English, but she does talk a lot about her experience of learning English and lots of other languages. She's sort of a polyglot. So she's got a lot of tips for learning English. But at the same time, although she speaks excellent English, she does still make quite a lot of mistakes. So I'm considering doing a reaction video to her, not to criticize, but to help, you know. Yeah, does that answer your question? Like,
Definitely. Yeah. And I wanted to, when you said that with lower levels, it might even be more effective for them to study with non-native teachers, I wanted to give you a virtual high five, because I've said that to people before too. And they're like, what? Nobody says that. And I'm thinking, like, every native speaking teacher should know that, because I've just seen so many situations where there's someone who's a beginner. They don't know anything really, and they get thrown into a classroom with a native teacher just because that's a native teacher. And it's just painful.
But you know, out in countries like Paraguay, where I was, that's the selling point. And these schools, they run their businesses, and if they can say, "Oh, we've got a native speaker," you know, that sells them more places in their classes.
Right. But that's just that belief they're in the market.
Yeah. It's marketing.
Yeah. So coming back to the idea of grammar and correctness, incorrectness, this whole idea of
well, that does tie in with the whole native thing as well, because a lot of native speakers, they don't know the difference between past perfect and the present, you know, past simple. You know, they don't even know what the names of the tenses. In fact, I was doing this sort of volunteer teaching thing, and I wasn't teaching that night, but you know, and this is people coming to teach who haven't really. They're not teachers. And this girl came and she was teaching about the tenses, and she was just talking about past, present, and future. And I was like, and she was saying things that are just so wrong. You know, she's a native speaker. she could speak perfectly well, and she did know English. She just didn't know what she knew, and she couldn't explain it, and she was explaining it completely wrong. And I could tell that the students were sitting there; they knew far more about the tenses than she did.
Yeah.
There's
That
more
happens
than
a
three
lot when
tenses.
you have just a native speaker who's not a certified teacher or a qualified teacher of English as a foreign language, right?
Yeah, or you don't even need to be certified. You just need to have, know a little bit about what you're talking about. And this is why when I first started teaching, I did my sort of CELTA course, which was like 4 weeks. It's quite intense, and I learned a lot. But then I learned a lot more in my first year teaching just from the textbooks,
Yeah.
and a lot of the time, I was just a couple of pages ahead from the students. That's all you need to do. And this is the advice I would give to new teachers that had sort of come over from the UK and were just thrown in the deep end. I would just say, look, just let the book teach.
Yeah.
And you just guide the students through it. Make sure you know what what you're teaching in that lesson well. And the book's been written by experts. So you just let the book do the work.
Yeah. And which book were you using at that point? Do you remember?
Well, we used Headway a lot. But then we used some other ones that were more geared to the other Cambridge exams.
Like New English File.
Yeah, things like that. And yeah, one's geared towards the proficiency exam and the other Cambridge ones. I'm a bit out of touch with that area now, but
yeah. So a lot of times students will want to learn all of these rules, and it's kind of ironic that they want to study with the people. They want to learn the rules of the language so that they can speak with people who have forgotten the rules of the language.
Or who never knew. They just learned the language naturally.
Yeah.
And never,
so it's ironic because then they get into this mentality of, I have to learn these rules, apply these rules. And then they hear native speakers making mistakes left and right and using different variations. Yeah. Maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe it's just a local, regional dialect or accent or way of speaking. And they get thrown off because it's so much nicer and easier when someone says, here's the rule. This is right. This is wrong. But in real life, that's not really how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mentioned that my next video is going to be one on state verbs. And that's a great example of where there are rules. Like if it's a state verb, you can't use it in the present continuous. Right. But it's a rule to break. Yeah, I'm loving it. Yeah, exactly. So that's an example of a rule that people break all the time. Or there are certain idiomatic expressions that break that rule. Right. But I still think it's good to know the rule. It's good to learn the rule first, and then learn what the exceptions are. And yeah, I talk about that a little in the video about how, yes, you can break the rule, but be careful, otherwise you just sound wrong.
Right, because there's rules about how you can break rules.
Yeah. But to say, we break the rules so much, so there's no point even learning them, I think is wrong. I think
that's probably
you need to start. Yeah, you need. So I am quite, and my videos do focus on grammar rules and things, partly because that's the way my brain works. I'm quite logical.
I feel you.
That's the sort of thing I would like to have for when learning Spanish or another language. But like I said, there are other people. I met other people who just throw themselves in and they come out the other side speaking Spanish. I wouldn't do that. I'd just come out the other side stressed.
I like to have the rule foundation too. Like when I was learning Russian, I was thrown in and I started to pick up some phrases and some words from being in the environment. But then when I started to actually go and look at some of the rules, everything started to click. Like, that's why that person was saying that like that instead of this other way. And now and that's the mistake that I made. And now I know the rule. And you have to have some kind of foundation. I've met people who learn English that both ways too. You've got the people who are just laser focused on rule. And typically it manifests itself like they have to think a lot before they speak because they're trying to find the rule. And so they have like this barrier of producing the language because of the thought processes that are happening. Whereas you have the people who have the other problem on the other side of the spectrum who just talk. And it's like they don't even receive any feedback from what's happening around them. They're just trying to produce so much. And it's like, you need more of those mental processes happening here.
Well, I think we tend to be either on one side of that scale or the other.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is push ourselves towards the middle.
Yeah.
So if we are very logical and we like the rules and everything, yes, that's good. But we need to push ourselves out there to talk and make mistakes and learn that way as well, even if that's not so comfortable for us. And the other way is true as well. If we, just like to talk and it's also, I mean, I think a lot of the time those people end up being able to communicate, but they make a lot of mistakes. And people don't correct them because they're very fluent. But, so it's good for them to sort of push themselves to learn the grammar and things as well.
And maybe slow down in their production of the language.
Yeah. Just to look at the logic of it.
Absolutely. Colin, thank you so much for being here today. Tell everybody how they can find you.
Well, main place would be on YouTube. If you search the English Language Club, you should find my channel. I think that's probably the best place.
Awesome. And we'll
make sure you subscribe and you'll get my videos.
Awesome. Yeah, check out Colin's new videos that are coming, and he also has a new channel coming, so that's going to be exciting to see too. Right? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, that's going to be a different thing. That's going to be more about personal finance, with a particular focus on sort of UK personal finance. So there may not be so much audience crossover, but if you are interested in that. The best thing would be to sign up to my mailing list, which you can do on my website. There'll be a link on all my videos to how you can sign up to my mailing list. And I'll probably mention it there just in case there's some people interested in both.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll put all the links under the video or under the episode. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to English World with Kris Amerikos. Now it's your turn. Don't just listen to English, speak English with us every day. Join our English Everyday speaking program today. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.